Sky takes you to the hillside citrus groves of the Kataoka district of Odawara, Japan. In the special feature produced by the Odawara Art Foundation and the Mori Art Museum, we explore photographer, architect, and contemporary artist Hiroshi Sugimoto's masterpiece, the Enoura Observatory. I originally encountered Sugimoto's work in 2005 in a Tokyo exhibition called The End of Time. And much later, together with Sky Global Emissary Chikako Tatsuma and Sky Fashion Co-Curator Timothy Nicol Ford, I visited the Cartier Crystallization of Time exhibition at Tokyo's National Art Center. For me personally, Sugimoto Sensei's exhibition design was more impressive than Cartier's extraordinary jewelry. The Enoura art facility on the outer rim of the Hakone Mountains was envisaged by Sugimoto as a forum for questioning art and culture in Japan and abroad. I'm enormously grateful to have been introduced by Johnny Walker, one of Sky's treasured global emissaries. I am so proud to return to Japan, a country which I've visited 58 times and in which I have orchestrated, directed, and managed years and years of cultural projects. Sky's proud to bring this episode and others to you during a time of closed borders and travel restrictions. We are now joined by Mami Kataoka, director of Tokyo's celebrated Mori Art Museum, who will be introducing Sugimoto Sensei's visionary work. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, my name is Mami Kataoka, director of the Mori Art Museum in Tokyo. Today I'm going to introduce a new film by Hiroshi Sugimoto called The Garden of Time. This film was commissioned for STAR's 6 contemporary artists from Japan to the world. Its exhibition now on view at the Mori Art Museum. The show is to aim not only to show the works of these prominent artists, but also to see how they reach to the position that they have in the global contemporary art world. So we asked Hiroshi to start from one of the very early stage work that he was recognized by the international art world. So the beginning was called Polar Bear. It's one of the first pieces in his series called the Diorama that was produced in 1976 after he went to New York in 1974. Then he was going around all these museums in New York. And one of the museums was American Natural History Museum. Then he saw all kinds of diorama, and then he happened to close his one eye and start looking at all this diorama landscape and realized that those diorama were stuffed animals, looked more like real animals than by seeing them with 2 eyes. He transforms that vision into camera's eye. Then the series of diorama, one of his representative series, was produced. Starting from this polar bear, what is the most recent work and the great example of the compilation of what he has done in the past years? This new cultural facility called Enoura Observatory. This place was opened in 2017, run by his own culture foundation called the Odawara Culture Foundation, which was founded in 2009. And between diorama series and Enoura Observatory, Hiroshi developed all kinds of artistic genres, including photography, contemporary art, architecture, and he was also quite knowledgeable about Japanese antiquities, gardening, and even cooking. We discussed that probably to show where he is now, to look into Enoura Observatory would be the best example. It's a compilation of all these different practices that he had been developing in the last few decades. Now the film is 33 minutes long, but it's a very interesting film. And the reason why it's called the Garden of Time, the architecture is also his sculpture and work itself. For instance, 100 meters long, the glass gallery, and then also stone stage and glass nose stage. So the whole set of the landscape is supposed to be an observatory to try to understand how the whole universe is structured and how we relate to the movement of the sun and movement of this planet. That each part is meticulously measured and designed to be able to physically feel the movement of the universe. But also, all these objects, or mostly antique gates and ancient stones and different elements composing this whole garden or whole observatory, coming from different time of a human history or even the history of the planet. And some of the fossils, for instance, coming from 300 million years ago. And some of the stones come from different time of Japanese history. So by going through these stories, we can walk through different part of our own history. But once you go through this garden, it's beautiful and it's very airy, and you can feel the different seasons of different flowers, such as cherry blossoms and mustard flowers. But if you walk through with Hiroshi, it's a very different experience because he can explain us the different stories of the different stones and gates and walls. It gives additional meaning and the stories of all these parts of the observatory. And I think it's strongly connected with the idea of conceptual art, not by looking what you see, but also try to understand or try to sort of dig deeper the meaning of the objects. There are about 50 stones and objects and gates and base stone, as well as his sculpture pieces. And if you start the gate and then go into the building first, and there is this 100 meters gallery, that 100 meters glass gallery is supposed to be looking into the direction at the sunrise on summer solstices, that you see the sunlight directly coming through this glass gallery. And there is the other sort of like a metal tunnel covered with the rusted metal that is meant to be the way when sunrise goes through on the winter solstice date. One day in the morning, like 5 o'clock, I was there to see the sun rise and the light coming directly through this the rusted tunnel. And in other parts or other stone stage, you can see sunrise on spring and an autumn equinox. So on a particular day, they all have events. People gather in the very early morning to see the sunrise and think that how ancient people used to be looking at the landscape. And that also relates to Hiroshi Sugimoto's another renowned series of works called the Seascapes. And the Seascapes started in 1980s when he started to question, what if we could share the landscape, or we could see the landscape when the human being from 10,000 years ago were also looking at. So he started to take pictures of different seascapes of different parts of the world. So that idea of our existence, how we relate to, or how do we position ourselves within the longer history of a human being, that idea is also embedded in the whole idea of this Enoura Observatory. The whole film is structured not as a sort of promotional video of the Enoura Observatory, but more as an artistic film. So his stories lead us to a bigger picture of the observatory, but also detail of the stories as well. Because there is particular concerns on the materiality of different details. So it's like a combination of a microcosmos and macrocosmos of the whole universe, that the whole structure or whole observatory is combination of a bigger picture as well as all the details accumulated into the whole sculpture. So I will go through some of the important elements of the observatory. And one is the optical glass stage, which is the beautiful nose stage or stage. He used this optical glass, and you can really see the casted glass, and that bring through all the lights of the natural light. That is the copy of the Roman amphitheater. So he measures the Roman amphitheater and then realized with exactly the same size. Instead of having this traditional pine tree as a background, because this north stage is facing to the Sagami Bay, so that people will see sky and sea as a background of the stage. Another copied element, in a way, is the important tea house. It's called Uchoten. It means listen to the rain, tea house. There's a very important tea house said to be designed by Sen no Rikyu. It's the origin of tea ceremony. So he also copies the size of a Taiwan tea house, try to recreate the exactly the same size tea house. And the Taiwan is known, which was made out of inexpensive materials like wood and mud and all these natural materials. So Hiroshi followed and see how that important master tea house could be recreated. The time or history goes back to even Stone Age, and there is a Torii gate. Torii is the gate for a Shinto shrine, and in front of his tea house, Uchoten tea house, there is a stone gate made out of the stone coming from different time of Japanese history. Also, another gate is called the Old Naraya Gate, and the Naraya was a ryokan. It's a traditional inn. It used to be located in Hakone, which was in a similar neighborhood as where the Enoura Observatory is. After the war, that ryokan was used by different politicians. Even some of the politicians who were drafting the current constitution of Japan, so the draft was written in that Naraya ryokan, in the inn. It also carried some of the political history or social history of this country. And by hearing all these different stories, we can start connecting different time and the different story of the history. And then whole observatory makes sense, not only a place where we feel the structure of the universe, but also start thinking about the whole history of Japan in culturally, socially, and politically. So the Enoura Observatory is still ongoing, and Hiroshi is still digging some holes, and then also try to relocate the shrine from middle of Tokyo. He said he's going to work on this Enoura Observatory as far as his life goes on. Yeah, it's the best way to understand who he is and what has been his practices.
I'm Dr. Jean Sherman, founder and director of SCCI, the Sherman Center for Culture and Ideas. You've been watching a SCCI Cinéphile Hub episode. This episode has been proudly supported by the SCCI Cinéphile Circle of private patrons. We are grateful for their generous assistance alongside a number of commercial, educational, cultural and government organisations, including the City of Sydney. More episodes are available for you to enjoy at sky.org.au. Thank you for joining us.